Hello everybody. In week 9 of Dances Us, it seems fitting to conclude with the theme Alliance. A flourishing art scene is the result of collaboration, co-production, knowledge sharing and partnerships, whether working at a local or global level. Today I'm speaking to Brenda Grech, Florinda Camilleri and Lucía Piquero, and I'd like to give a little introduction to our guests. Brenda Grech is a Maltese dancer and artist who has very much established herself in the UK dance scene, forming part of the Scottish Ballet Dance Company from 2008 to 2014, and for the past 6 years she has been a dancer for Rambert Dance Company. ÄĆfinMalta have also invited Florinda Camilleri to this interview, a pharmacist and an established practitioner of contemporary dance, working locally and internationally as a dance practitioner, creating, performing, and coaching, delivering workshops and classes for schools and companies, and collaborating on multidisciplinary projects. Also joining us today is Lucía Piquero, currently head of the Dance Studies Department at the University of Malta, also presenting her research and her choreographic work internationally, including several conferences, commissions, residencies, and collaborations. We are beginning each interview with the same question. What is your earliest or most vivid memory of dance?
So my earliest memory of dance is watching Shirley Temple on TV. So black and white TV, little Shirley Temple tapping away. I think for me, that and Fred Astaire, watching Sound of Music. It wasn't until I was around 11 that I was able to get to a theater and watch a production. It was probably Ada Dance Company. I remember going to watch my dance teacher, Joanne Casabene, in one of the other productions. So I think for me, it very much started on TV, just watching Seven Brides for Seven Brothers was another good movie that I used to watch, The King and I. So that's where the love for dance started for me.
How old were you, Brenda? Approx.
When I started dancing or watching these things?
Watching and dancing.
So watching, I think I've always enjoyed watching from as young as 4, probably 5. I remember I joined also at Zaytoon. We had a group where we did like pom-pom girls for carnival. So that's the first thing I danced. And then a school opened in Zaytoon when I was 10, like a ballet school. And that's when I started training.
Yeah, thanks, Brenda. You just reminded me about all my memories of watching dance on film, how important that was for the development of an idea of what's going on in the scene. I had my idols, Darcy, Bassel, Viviana Duranti, Sylvie, of course. I had West Side Story, so all those things are in there. I was very lucky to have that. But when you mentioned earliest memories of dance, this really funny experience came to mind where I was taking part in a performance with the big girls of Tanya. I was a little flamenca and I was invited to take part in a production they were doing in Gozo on the roof of the Cittadella. And I remember Miss Rosanna, my teacher at the time, Rosanna Maya, told my mom that we need to meet for rehearsals at 8 o'clock. And my mother interpreted this as 8 o'clock in the morning. So she woke us up, early, about 5 o'clock, we got on the boat and went over to the Citadel, only to find that nobody was there. There were no mobile phones in those days. It started raining. Yeah, and then everyone kind of showed up, 12 hours later. It was a really special performance, but this was the first thing that came to mind, so I wanted to share it with you.
That sounds painful, I have to say. I was trying to remember early memories of dance, but to be honest, I kind of bumped into dance quite literally. Like, I wasn't into dance when I was little. I was into gymnastics. That was my thing. And one day I was walking with my mom and we bumped into this other friend of mine and her mom, and they were I don't remember if they were on the way to ballet or coming back from ballet class. And they sort of said, oh, you should come to ballet. And so I went to the school, and I was 11. And my teacher, and I like to remind her this all the time, said, oh, I think you're a bit old, to start ballet right now, because back then it was very, so she told me I'll have to do a trial class. So my first memory of ballet is actually a trial class, which happened to be a stretching class, which I think was very good for me because I was quite naturally stretchy. So I passed my trial and I was able to start class. And I remember the moment of actually, holding the bar for the first time and having this sense of calm, and that stays till now, like holding the bar. But my first experience was literally bumping into ballet, quite literally.
It's also interesting to hear that your first introduction to dance was a challenge. To ballet was in the form of a challenge. Could you all give us your personal interpretation of the word alliance and identify an experience in which you felt one? Are there any alliances you have experienced that have brought you to new understandings of the word?
Yeah, this question I find really relevant for me because I am experiencing the fruits of a very special alliance that I started 3 years ago now, along with Niels, Greta, and Johannes, very special people in my life. We started a creative studio, originally getting together to link art, business, science, and the practices that we share between us. And we kept going for 2 years, testing the waters. We held extremely regular conversations about not only our practices and the way forward as creative people in Malta and globally, but also personally, our own internal reflections and processes. And we created this very safe space to share and to develop tools for communication. And eventually, at the end of last year, in 2019, we closed this company. But what has been born of that is an extremely, extremely special friendship. We even live in a house together. And we have created this really tight bond that is kind of a cradle for our own adventures. It allows us to now do our own thing, but it grounds us and gives us a safe space to always come back to and to give support and receive support. And for me, this is a really powerful sense of alliance. Of course, alliance is relationship based on, let's say, shared interests or some kind of common goal. And it's very special when you start off with one intention and it blossoms into something so much deeper and so much more meaningful. So I'm grateful to have experienced that.
Very nice. I think I want to add a little bit on that idea of shared interests, and also like the idea of having an alliance with someone. It can, for me, mean exactly that we're stronger because we're together and because we bring our skills to something, and through the sharing of skills we become stronger. So it's a bit like the whole is bigger than the sum of its parts kind of idea. But also, and I think this is what I've experienced most, that through alliances we can experience different perspectives of things. I've thankfully lived through many examples of this, like even as a choreographer, having someone from a different style of dance that I don't know, that would immediately enrich the choreography, the experience, my own creativity. I remember an example of collaborating with a visual artist who set us a task in a research project to use a painting by Kandinsky in this case, so quite complex, as a base to create a choreography, and I took it as a base for my space, the space of my choreography, the way the choreography was spaced, which was, you know, it just added a completely different layer to my work. But also, and I think it's important to recognize, and it's something that I'm trying to do a lot right now, that you can't experience the world from the eyes of another person unless you sit and listen to people. And I noticed that is something very important, for example, in issues of gender or race, for example. And I think that this is something that I want to start, you know, that I've started actually trying to work on already, in the idea that, okay, who am I, and what is my experience, and what kind of alliances can I have that allow me to know that my experience is not you know, universal. I don't know anything because I don't experience everything the same way. You know, being the whitest you can be probably in this world, I experience the world as a white person, which is not the same as someone, you know, a black person or person of color would experience. And in that sense, we learn so much, but we need to also learn to take these alliances and to stop and listen to people. So I think this is the sort of aspect of alliance, the different perspectives, and how bringing other ideas to the table can actually enrich everyone as we go.
Also, it's so nice just to hear like the two different perspectives. When I was thinking about this question, for me, the first thing that popped into mind is that art in general is just such a collaborative thing, and even if it's just setting a choreography to a piece of music, there's already that relationship going on with lighting designers. So there's always this, even at its very basic level, we're constantly having this partnership in our work. One experience that popped into mind, which has really, I feel like we might also go more into this direction, is work that I've done a couple of years ago with a couple. We were working on this piece, and they filmed it in a studio. They kind of put all these cameras in this one studio, and they filmed it in a way that then we could watch it on a VR headset. And it was just so mind-blowing for me to see what the movement looked like, what I looked like from above, from the side. It was just so interesting. And that was one collaboration which kind of blew my mind, really. And I feel like it's so relevant to where we are now, with these, through this pandemic, where we're seeing more technology kind of coming into the dance world or the art scene. So that collaboration was one that kind of really, it kind of just opened my mind as to how far the art scene can go, and all the different channels that we can collaborate and extend into.
Oh, great. Thank you for that, guys. It was really cool to hear that Alliance brings new perspectives. It brings in different perspectives, and it blossoms into directions which perhaps sometimes you don't expect at all, which brings a multiplicity, and maybe this multiplicity strengthens the art form even more. What are the advantages of knowledge sharing that you see around you? How can the combining of resources through such alliances change the landscape of the creative and cultural sectors?
When I started thinking about this question, I thought about this idea now of knowledge sharing, and I was thinking, this was written by someone, I can't remember who, I'm sure I read it somewhere. But when we share something material, right? So if I have 4 apples and I share them with you, then each of us will have 1 apple. When we share knowledge, then we all have the same amount of knowledge. Not the amount we have doesn't reduce; it always multiplies. So it's a really like, it's so easy to share knowledge and ideas. And I think about it, and I can't think of one reason why not to share. You know. And I can't think of a reason not to receive or search for knowledge in this case, or for ideas from other people. So to be honest, I was thinking about the advantages, but then I started thinking, well, the point is I don't see any disadvantage of sharing knowledge. You know, this is the idea. Now, I think you all know that I'm a bit of a bookworm, so probably that's my perspective in particular for that reason. But when I thought about this and the cultural sectors and you know, my particular position right now as well at university, but still being a practitioner, I think that's where I focus, this idea of the practice and the theory of dance, and how sometimes they seem to be in confrontation. There seems to be a from both sides, I'm not saying, from the academic side, or, you know, practitioners know nothing, we need to tell them. From the practice side, academics understand nothing because they sit down and look at books instead of dancing, you know. So I mean, I really don't see this at all as a useful thing. So I think for me, it's more of a, you know, we need to share ideas, because in me as a person from both sides, all I've done is benefit from the crossover between these two aspects. And I think it can happen also at a bigger level. And I think it happens, you know, because it's not that nobody's collaborating at this level, you know. Many companies have research divisions within them, and choreographers are doing research. You can't be a choreographer right now, or even a dancer. Sorry, the band head thing doesn't exist anymore, you know. And I think in a way this division between the two things hurts both sides. And so I think this idea of knowledge sharing, since dance is knowledge, because it is, we need to break it, you know. We need to really like cross over between these two aspects. And that's what I think that's what the question brought up for me most clearly.
I was thinking how maybe this could stem out of the fact that already when you apply for an MA or a doctorate, they offer you the option of practice-based or research-based, and that's already a big divide, I think.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, this division exists in academia. I'm not, you know, what I'm saying exactly is that it exists in every level of it. But at the same time, now you can also defend that you do practice-based or practice-led or practice as research. And each of them uses a practice in a slightly, you know, like a nuanced, different way to see it. And these options exist. But I think, again, I think people need to know about them. We need to share these ideas and this knowledge to be able to apply it. But yes, it's actually a very good point.
Cool, thank you. I didn't know actually that they're merging more and more the options of taking up.
There's a huge discussion, because as usual, you know, some people don't agree with certain aspects and not, but there's a lot of different ways in which you can engage theory and practice in research right now, and there's a lot of different formats in which you can share this knowledge. Like there's a lot more visual essays and video essays and performances, knowledge sharing, and so, you know, this is why I think it would be great to join more the two aspects of it.
Really love to lead on a little bit with what Lucía is speaking about. I absolutely connect with this, because I too myself feel like I am a kind of a mix of academic, practitioner, artist, scientist. I don't quite fall into one specific category comfortably, let's say. And this is a general experience that's happening quite potently all over the world. We're recognizing that certain labels and systems just don't fit anymore. The world is changing at such a fast rate. There's a lot of information, but not always the right knowledge on how to use it. And I think Alliance comes in to investigate the in-betweens of these spaces, and to create new trajectories, new job titles, you know, new ways of researching, new ways of practicing, that don't exist yet, possibly. And yet to address the fact that many of the systems just simply don't relate to us anymore. And really, the only way to move forward in a healthy way is to have communication about it, to share, to draw from each other's experiences, and to craft the way forwards together. Otherwise, we're just crafting something else that's not going to work. And also, what works today might not work tomorrow. And keeping the doors open and keeping this sharing going on helps us to ensure that what's happening is sustainable as well, and transforms at the rate that reflects our own transformation.
So I love, guys, where you took this question. For me, it was so interesting to have kind of a different perspective to it, as I'm coming more from a professional dancer's background, let's say. Something that relates with what Lucía started off with. For me, art or being an artist is all about learning. You just never stop learning. And I think that's what kind of feeds me within this industry. And I feel like when I'm teaching, I'm also learning. And I can see more and more, for example, choreographers, when they're setting a piece, they're collaborating with their dancers, and not necessarily, you know, these are the steps, here we go. But there's always that discovery and the working together and kind of learning from each other. So I think we're heading in the right direction. Of course, there's always room for improvement and growth. But yeah, for me, the advantages of learning is just endless. And I think we're all curious. I think that's what artists are, just curious people ready to discover and to know more. And I think I'll leave it at that, because I just love the way the others have already kind of expanded on the topic.
Yes, Brenda, in fact, I was speaking to a friend of mine about this yesterday. I feel that my family and my friends don't really understand what a dancer does. They ask me now, like, what are you doing now that you're not dancing? And I'm like, okay, being a dancer is not just these are the steps, here we go, as you said. And I'm having to go deeper and deeper, trying to explain to people what an alliance in the dance world means as a dancer, as a creative practitioner, as a choreographer, as all the millions of titles you can think of. And I actually, once I see that the person I'm speaking to is, you know, oh wow, is that okay? That's interesting. So now I understand better what you do. And yeah, it's interesting to share this with more and more people.
I think as well in this time, it's just such an incredible time that we have more, let's say, time on our hands, rather than just, for me, being in the studio. It's about networking and maybe just seeing where you can take your career, and just collaborative. And you know, we're talking about alliance, so creating different partnerships, let's say, with even just photography, like that is such a beautiful thing, just to learn about from their perspective. Like I feel like I learn so much from photographers and their perspective on let's say how they want to shoot something, and I'll be talking about lines and what I want to achieve, or the abandonment that I want to capture in that particular instant or that image. So I had to write this, fill in like a little questionnaire for my dance school in London, just to kind of encourage the graduates. And that's one of the things I was talking to them about, is that this is not a wasted time. Like, as artists, the research you do, just learning from whatever's going on online, watching these movies that we were talking about back in the days, you know, the artists were so all-rounded. And I feel like as artists, we're getting back to that, where dancers, as Lucía said, they're not just bunheads, but you know, it's such a range of things that we're able to do, and I feel like that's with everybody in, you know, whether it's music or any other art form. I feel like it's all kind of, we're all feeling the need and the sense of coming together to create something more beautiful or meaningful, let's say.
Have you seen or experienced an example of when this shift has benefited Malta's artists on a global level?
Maybe I can start as the non-Maltese voice of the group, perhaps. Or adoptive Maltese, I guess. I've been here for 7 years, and 7 years for a huge cultural change is not a lot of time. So there's several things I wouldn't be able to see because there hasn't been enough time. Although there has been a change definitely in the scene, you know. Of course, my perspective is particular, but university coming in has been a shift. ÄŽfinMalta coming in has been a shift, obviously. But I think the thing that I really want to share is that every time I've tried to reach out to dance schools in the island, and there's so many people doing dance in the island. You know, there's such a rich amount of people, dancers, teachers, doing an amazing job. And every time I've reached out, you know, like for the Nerkenline project we did, we had a good 300 people walking down the streets in Valletta, and everyone was looking at us. And so I think whether or not I can see the shift yet, I can see the openness towards this shift and towards the possibility of alliances. And I think most people are really open to collaboration, and that is, you know, conducive to gigantic shifts. So I think even if I in my particular perspective of this short amount of time cannot maybe see it clearly, I think it's there, you know, it's happening as we go.
I think we go back to the idea of knowledge sharing again, no? How the more we open ourselves up and not try to hide or keep knowledge to ourselves, the more the alliance becomes stronger and the more fruit, as Florinda said, it can bloom or grow.
Yeah, I think it's also a bit of a two-way thing in the way that the same that you need to be open, you have to try not to preach, you know, like I can share my knowledge, but I cannot impose my knowledge. This is not the way to go. So I think the openness has to be both ways, and there needs to be I think that's the thing, right? Alliance is horizontal, it's non-hierarchical. It has to be, otherwise it doesn't work. And I think that's the shift that is happening, that things are starting to feel equal at different levels, because they are. The reality is nobody has more or less knowledge. We have different kinds of knowledge, basically.
That is so touching what you said, Lucía. I'm just like on mute here, just saying, oh, that's so beautiful. I actually wrote it down just to have it for my future notes. For me, this was kind of a question that I was shying away from, just because I'm Maltese, you know, but I left Malta when I was 16 to study abroad and have been here for many years now. Have been away from home for many, many years. So without giving away my age, but I think, you know, as we're saying, with the university, with the dance company, I could not be happier to just see these things starting off in Malta. And I try to follow as much as I can online with all the different initiatives that are going on. And I just feel so excited because, like myself, there must be many dancers who want to pursue a career in dance, but for me that was not possible if I stayed at home back then. So now we're starting to see this change, and that's brilliant. I couldn't be happier. You know, Lucinda mentioned the schools, and for me, one thing that I really miss on the island, we used to have, I think Florinda, you would remember, we had a dance council. And it was just such a beautiful thing that we used to have that brought the schools together. And that was such an important point in my career. I remember Dance Council had invited this company called Ballet d'Europe, which was a neoclassical dance company. And they came to perform in Malta. And as a dance council, some dancers were selected, and we also did a piece. And the director offered me to go and join his company. So that's what I did when I was 18. And from then on, I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to be in a dance company. And is that 13 years ago? Yeah, and that's what I've been doing ever since. I was able to, you know, make dance my living. And so I'm so thankful to Tanya Bayona and Alison White and all those people who have put so much time and effort to set that up. And I would love to see something like that, because I do, in a sense, even though I'm so far away, I do feel that division within the schools. Like when I come to teach, for example, back home, it's either I go to one school or the other. Like there's, it's hard to, which I also totally understand, because I think being an island is such a specific thing. And I think we're so small. There's so much going on, as Lucia is saying. It becomes quite competitive. We all need to make a living, and it's hard. And so I kind of also understand how the whole mentality works. But yeah, super excited that, I've got my own example of how I was able to kind of go from Malta to starting a career abroad. But super excited and grateful for anyone and everyone who's feeding into the dance scene, the independent dance companies that are coming up as well. It's just really exciting to see.
So yeah, thank you.
Thank you all for your perspectives on this. It was really great to hear them. A few things that also popped up into my mind with this question. A few people rather were also Chica Grima with Puerto Flamenco, opening up a whole channel of beautiful knowledge sharing again in and out of the island, and really establishing a super high standard, of professional dance, professional flamenco dance that's being exported and imported to Malta. And I never dreamed I would be able to sit down and watch Israel Galvan, on the seashore of Valletta, and that was. These experiences have been definitely born from alliances. Rubber bodies come to my mind, Kinemastic, there's literature festival, there's many fantastic things going on. As someone Maltese who has been on the island most of my life, has been through some time as a professional dancer, and now I have quite a few different perspectives, and I've spent many years kind of mulling over this, what's going on in the scene. One of the crucial shifts that happened was access to infrastructural support for artists. In the past few years, the possibilities for getting support have really opened up, and the access to them as well. So, people feel much more able to say, okay, I need to train myself in this, and there are funds that I can tap into to do it. And there's someone I can speak to who can guide me through this application, who actually knows my face and who cares about my progress, and who supports me to fulfill my potential, and in doing that is enriching the scene. So that's one huge step, and of course ÄŽfinMalta has stemmed from it. Moveo, there's so many beautiful things that have come out. I mean, I speak mostly about dance because that's my sphere, but it goes wider than that. However, now we are reaching a point where the infrastructure isn't transforming at the rate that the scene is growing. And this is creating a lot of tension. So we have a lot of people who are really up for change and for growth and for new ideas, but we feel at a loss as to how to make them happen. And I recognize that in many institutions and governmental organizations that have quite a bit of power to make this happen, there are many people working on making this happen, but they kind of reach a glass ceiling. So there's resistance from the top end that's kind of stunting the growth, let's say. And that weighs down and has an impact all the way down then to the schools, to the educational system. And I think it's something that really needs to be addressed. you know, along with many other things. But yeah, as an artist, I really recognize this glass ceiling that needs to be smashed. I hope it will be smashed soon.
Yeah, and this starts at the level of me simply explaining to somebody who thinks I'm not going to say just a dancer, but thinks that all I do is dance, explaining how and what I invest my time and my research and my energy and my creativity into. It starts at that level. And that's where, again, I'm going back again to knowledge sharing, how we need to speak up more about what we do in everyday life, literally on a day-to-day basis, and how important that is, how much we are contributing to the well-being of the art and people around us.
I think that's so important what you're saying, Martina, about like the importance of art within our culture and within our societies. Especially now, you know, we're really celebrating the NHS. So the health workers, I guess I'm saying NHS because that's what we're clapping for in the UK at the moment. And you know, I feel so grateful for these people who saves lives. But also it's so important that we really start understanding the culture, the idea of art in Malta and how important that is for our well-being, as you said, and for and to keep us going, because we do need art, we need escapism, we need to see something on stage that's a projection of what we're going through, or not, something that takes us completely away from our reality. So I think that's the kind of culture that we need to encourage a little bit more, or maybe help people understand how important art is for our lives, for our livelihoods.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, Brenda, and I'd love to add a little bit more to it, which is that yeah, art is somewhat a mirror of society. And in this time, again, where we're going through a global transformation, what is our actual role? What can we be doing to support this social transformation? And linking to the fact that we're a tiny island, our art is often somewhat docile. Yeah, we have been exploring our art, but there's a fear of stepping on the wrong toes, of being too critical when we need to be critical. And I noticed that, you know, for myself, I recognize that sometimes I don't really feel I have the right tools for criticism. You know, we aren't brought up as a critical society. So with this, you know, we need to kind of educate ourselves on being critical, and a lot, you know, as a role of being an artist, which is not an easy thing to face, especially when, you know, it's quite difficult to make things work and to earn a living. But then to have this on top of us is quite heavy. But I think it's really important, and it's so important to recognize the work of people that are bringing activism into art. You know, people like Law and many amazing people that are paving the way for this. And again, I look forward to seeing art that is, you know, a bit more rough around the edges and says it like it is. And I hope that this period can help to bring this out. Yeah, who knows? I hope.
Yeah, if I may, I think one of the things that I'm a bit scared of at the moment with art is that we establish art as this form of entertainment, because that's what it's doing right now, right? Like, we are going around on Facebook and we're seeing people saying, oh, you wouldn't survive without movies or Netflix or anything like that. And I'm not saying that's like wrong, but art is not that. Art is not there to help you when you're bored, you know, or it shouldn't be that only, let's say. It should be other things as well. And I think this idea of criticism that I completely agree with, and I've had students, by the way, because we teach dance criticism, who told me directly that they would not write criticism here because they're scared. And that really broke my heart, because it's not very healthy as a scene if you cannot write criticism like that. And, you know, we all know what we're talking about. We're not talking about criticizing something, we're talking about critiquing something, which is a slightly different thing. But also, like, this idea of being critical, you need to start with yourself. And this idea of sharing knowledge, you have to start with yourself as well, in the sense that you need to self-evaluate, you need to see what you're doing. As you're saying, you need to see what your art is doing, what role it's playing. And perhaps, and I've been there, and it's not a pretty place to be in, I have to say, when you realize that, you know, maybe just you're not doing very well, or maybe you're not doing things that are doing anything. Maybe what you're doing is actually completely irrelevant, you know. But when you get to that point is when you start really pinching and going in depth and actually trying to break away from certain things and habits and things. But you need to put yourself in a very vulnerable position to start with. And I think that's what's missing a little bit, that sense of vulnerability and that sense of, again, openness, being open to being in this position of vulnerability. I don't know, I think in a way that's what art does, right? It shows our humanity, it shows our vulnerability. And because it does that, it can actually open up so many possibilities and teach us so much about who we are and what we do. And I think, you know, it's not entertainment, it's not pretty sometimes, you know, it has to hurt sometimes.
Well, if it helps you question things or evokes some sort of encourages thinking in a way, and and questioning. I love that you use the word vulnerability as well. I think to be an artist, you really have to kind of tap into that. So I loved hearing both of your kind of ideas. So thank you. Yeah.
This idea of being quite defensive when it comes to criticism. Perhaps we're not equipped with the right tools to criticize. I mean, criticism is actually, it brings new perspectives that help you on your own journey, or help us on our own journeys. And it's important that on this island, rather than thinking of a union, like not a union, but like one collectivity, this is something that came up in an ACM lab I recently took part in. Rather than thinking of one unity, thinking of different collectivities, different ecosystems that work in symbiosis. And that for me was very, very, very relevant, because that's how we can add value to what we do, I think.
No, I just wanted to make a point that comes from what you were saying, this idea of having the tools ourselves. And someone told me this, I think it was in my master's, but I can't really remember because my memory is terrible. But, you know, our school system is designed to punish failure and to only provide, you know, good marks if you succeed. First of all, what does it mean to succeed? You know, and in arts especially, what does it mean to succeed? But also, if you cannot fail at the level of school, when, you know, things like earning a living are not part of the equation, or not as much as they will be later when you're a self-employed freelance, you know, when can we fail then, if we cannot fail there? And to be honest, we should be allowed to fail all the time. And there's one of my favorite artists, writers, is Neil Gaiman. And he says this, right? Make amazing mistakes. This is what you need to do to be an artist. And the point is, we're not allowed. Our society does not allow us, because it does not encourage failure. Failure as a positive force, and not failure as something that deserves punishment.
Agreed. It was very much part of my upbringing, and I think in general Maltese education, the system gives you this fear of failure, and that's possibly where it stems from that kind of upbringing. Do you have a dream project you would like to realize through the principles of alliance we've been discussing?
For me, I'm still very much, one with Rambert. So that's kind of my, that takes up most of my time, being a dancer and working with whatever projects we've got going on. But I would very much love to collaborate a little bit more with projects back home. I think for me, I very much miss that, and just to start building that connection back again. And yeah, who knows, I'd love to collaborate with gsmålta if the opportunity arises. And yeah, I guess that's what kind of briefly came to mind when I was thinking of that.
Yeah, I do have, and I think it might be like too big a dream, but I'm open for failure. Let's just do it this way. I would like to, I was going to say demonstrate, that's such a big word. I would like to try to show, and it comes also with all the ideas that we've been discussing, that dance and dance research, so both practice and research, can actually really contribute to research in other, let's say, more important, with a lot of quotes, areas. My research goes into embodied cognition and how our, cognition depends on our body, put very roughly, obviously. But what I want to sort of work on is this idea that as dancers, I mean, who can know more about embodiment, honestly, than us? We spend our lives training our bodies, and our bodies are not separate from our mind or our cognition. So we really know what we're talking about when we talk about embodied cognition and embodiment. So I would love to collaborate with other disciplines, and in fact, I'm starting to put it in place actually, to try and show how dance can actually serve as a tool for modeling things that eventually can help in psychology, can help in cognitive sciences, in neurology, and in so many aspects as well. It can go in there. And I think I always keep, this is a bit of an anecdote, but I always keep in mind this encounter I had. Apart from the old, you have a PhD in dance, how do you do that? Like how does that? Always. I had someone once ask me if doing research in dance we ever come to any conclusion. And I was like, whoa, okay. So I would really like to, in answer to that, see how we can show to people that actually there is knowledge in what we do. There is a lot of knowledge, but not just knowledge that reverts into the art form itself, but knowledge that has a lot to offer to society, and even beyond the idea of dance therapy, which is where everyone seems to go sometimes when we talk in this way. This is my dream. I think that's the dream project that I have.
My dream project links a little bit to what Lucia's speaking about, because it's actually already in place, and my dream is to keep it evolving and to make space for a deeper investigation of this project, which is it was traveling investigation of notions of home. So it's a research within a certain community about notions of home and belonging, and with the view to make space for conversations around these subjects that are so crucial. Already having done the project in 2 different places. One of them was actually based in Malta, but it happened online, which was also super fascinating. We've really experienced this opening up of conversations that are so powerful. People our own personal experience of going into this project has brought so much learning, so much knowledge, so much even understanding of ourselves on a deeper level, understanding of our society and habits. our families, there's been so much brought up just by questioning home and belonging. And my dream is to refine the tools that I have to help this project grow. Not only the project, but the conversation, really, to help this conversation grow. And yeah, I see the role of movement in investigating these grand, almost very abstract concepts. Movement can open the doors to a very direct, almost pragmatic channel of intimate contact with these subjects. And yeah, as I talk about it, I can keep going forever, but this is my dream, to hone my tools and facilitate dance and movement to make space for conversations that need to happen.
I encourage you all to follow follow the journey you're on, and that you find yourself, paving your own way there. And I really hope that Alliance can reinforce your own practice and bring resilience and hopefully advocacy too. So what do you think Alliance looks like in the arts during the COVID-19 crisis or in its wake?
Maybe I can add on a little bit to this, because I'm in agreement, Lou. I am going through that process myself of questioning. I don't even feel comfortable with the term dancer anymore, and I tend to say dancing human. I don't know why, but it's kind of evolved to that, or human that moves more than other people. I don't know, but what I wanted to share was this paragraph from a really amazing article on Medium about the position of the arts in the current pandemic. So if you bear with me, it's not very long. I'm going to read it quickly. So, in a world where we are already confronting critical interconnected challenges, climate change, the refugee crisis, food scarcity, system collapse, and so on, I think it is essential that we continue asking these questions. What is the role of art at a time of social transformation? Why do we make art? For whom? And does it make sense to continue using the same formats and materials? What should art be focusing on? And what difference can it make? How far can artists go in social transformation without renouncing their role as creators or artists? When does it stop being art? Can the art world provoke and drive social transformation, a shift in values, making us rethink our relationship to material culture? Can it reveal new definitions of what progress means? Without doubt, the current situation leads us to question, rethink, reimagine the way art institutions, art practices, and artists operate. Yeah. So this is by a lady called Carmen Salas, and it's an article on Medium.
That was beautiful, Brenda. Thanks for sharing. So to add to all of that, for me, it was so interesting to hear what kind of Lucía had to say, because as a professional dancer myself, or as we're saying, like, what are we, dancers, artists? There's so much more to doing your steps or executing a routine as a dancer. But I wish we felt special, because sometimes you feel like dance comes at the bottom of it all, and you're like, even in a system, in a company, you just feel like, where does the dancer, fit into all of that when you're the one that goes on stage or whatever. But I mean, I understand your point of view and what you're kind of saying with these mythical creatures and everything. But yeah, sometimes I wish we could remind ourselves that we're special in a way. And I guess that also ties into the identity and what Martina was talking about. I think we put so much of ourselves in our art, because it's hard work, and we dedicate so much of our time that it kind of becomes part of who we are, or that identity. So that was just to add a little bit to what we were discussing, to answer the questions in terms of what partnerships will look like through COVID and kind of beyond. I think we're already starting to see such a big shift within, especially dance, or I've seen a lot of musicians as well taking things online. With, you know, with these, there's so much, it's almost overwhelming with how much everybody has gone online and just trying to put everything out there. But I think there's also a shift that we might be seeing more technology happening in dance, and a bigger collaboration, seeing how, you know, we're training ourselves to connect with so many different parts of the world through these Zoom meetings that we're doing. And with this podcast, for example, it's such a beautiful initiative that ÄrzfinMalta have put together, and maybe that is, it came together because of this kind of shift, you know, having to close the company from its regular, you know, from what it regularly offers. And now we're having this podcast and space for conversation, and it's so beautiful. And I hope that the company keeps it up. But I think, you know, as much as things will change, and as I said, I think we'll go maybe more virtually than we've ever been before. But as well, nothing probably replaces, especially for dance, the experience that you have in a space, a live experience, because it's not just theater. Now we're seeing dance in so many other different mediums, or expressed in different areas. And I think, yeah, I think that's the beauty that we can kind of, gives us hope that we'll still get to that one day, I guess, like the real experience, the live experience, let's say.
Yeah, it's so interesting to consider now the new alliances that are going to need to happen to make the live experiences happen. Our notion of theater is in overnight changed. You know, people are planning, you know, for auditoriums where we'd normally have about 300 people seated to have maybe 30. So look how our experience of theater is going to change, how important and how exciting it is to suddenly bring in totally new sound design, facilities, looking at collaboration with architects, with engineers. The possibilities now that have just opened are really huge, overwhelming sometimes, but also so exciting because we have an opportunity to rewrite a lot of systems in a way that better suits us and better suits the way that the world is evolving. So yeah, the alliances are now actually the most crucial thing in the transformation of the art scene, and possibly the kind of alliances that we never imagined could have happened, now are happening, and they're going to have an impact on our lives. And I'm so excited to see what this is.
Yeah, I'm joining you in the excitement there. I think there's a lot of possibilities, and there's, as Flo was saying, there's a lot of possibilities for literal creativity that emerges when we literally have no option but to find solutions. You know, this is where you know, alliances makes us stronger, because it gives us solution to things that we cannot see otherwise. I just want to make a point to thank Brenda, because actually you brought up something that I always forget to mention, that my point of not considering dancers special is actually to make them equally valuable to anyone else. So it's precisely in the idea that it would help avoid that. Without creating the separation, you become as valuable as anyone else, basically, not less valuable. So it's good that you brought it up, because I always forget.
It's so beautiful yeah, such a beautiful way to say it, actually. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
There's one more thing I wanted to mention about possible alliances for the future that I think are really important, which is some kind of reconnection with natural earth systems, kind of reattunement with nature and with the patterns of nature. We have so much to learn from nature still. Its own systems of organizations have been around much longer than we have. And I really hope that somehow or another, natural systems figure into our design thinking, our research, our artistic practice. You know, suddenly getting on a plane every 2 days to go on tour is not a possibility. So what's going to happen now, and how can we respond in a really sensitive and awakened way to this?
Building on what Flo mentioned, yeah, we have caught ourselves in a cycle of overproduction, or the need to produce, and I think the situation that this pandemic has created could help us rethink or revise or just take a new look at culture as practice rather than a resource to be exploited. And yeah, I think that I also got this from an ACM lab I took part in a while back, and that sentence really struck me. So yes, thank you very, very, very much to all of you for taking the time to discuss this.
I want to thank ÄśfinMalta. Yeah, I want to thank ÄśfinMalta for having me in this conversation. I was just so excited when I see, Lucía and Florinda were going to be in this as well. It's just so exciting for me, especially, I guess, as more of my everyday is constant. I'm going to go and do a dance class now, so it's more training, and just for me to have this opportunity to connect with, first of all, my country and people who are doing so much in my country, and it's just so exciting to have this option to have a conversation and talk. I'm super grateful for this opportunity, and so lovely to catch up with you all.
Yeah,
thank you. It's knowledge sharing, yay.
Yeah, thanks Tina as well for organizing it and for presenting some really, really valuable questions. It's been a privilege to share this virtual space with you all. It's always so special to recognize so many connections between us. Brenda is from Zaytoun, and I'm sitting here in Zaytoun. I live in Zaytoun now.
No way!
Yes.
Oh my God!
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's so many connections, and I'm also grateful to Äśfin for inviting me back. As a past member of the company, I'm really, I feel very privileged to be able to come back in and share a different perspective now on things, and I really look forward to things developing and enriching and thriving. So thank you.
And I think it's also a great example of a safe space where everyone can actually share thoughts without the fear of any kind of backlash. So yeah, thank you for actually providing that space. I think that's the most important thing one can do right now, I think. Thank you.